Hi, I'm Mike Cerrone with Mastermind Agent. In this video, you will learn how to close 85% of your short sale listings fast. What do you think are the keys to making sure that your short sale transaction goes through?
I'm sure that anyone that's taken any kind of classes has already heard this. I'm sure I sound like a broken record. But you need to make sure that you have a very good package to begin with. So you want to make sure that you go to each specific bank's website and download their package. I'm sure that agents have their own packages that they give to the sellers, but in addition to your package, go to the first, and if there's a second, to the second bank's website, download their short sale package, and make sure that it's absolutely as complete as possible. Along with that, I highly recommend, getting bids from contractors and having extensive pictures if there's any problems and submitting that with your bid as well so that you can justify your price to the bank.
You mentioned a good package, bids, anything else that somebody who wants to get that short sale through should focus on?
With the new Senate Bill 458, if you're people that are in California, and of course I'm not an accountant or an attorney, so I need to state that up, but the way that I've interpreted the law from real estate attorneys is that the second cannot ask for anything from the seller. Doesn't mean the seller can't still contribute, they can't ask for it. So what we're doing now, since that new law has changed, we've been finding a little bit of reluctance from some of the seconds that want to do short sales. So I'd highly recommend calling the second and making sure that they're even going to be willing to do the short sale in the beginning, so that you're not wasting your time. It's also very important that the seller actually has a true hardship. And of course, we all know a hardship means that they have a divorce or a job loss, relocation to a different state, some kind of a disability, a sickness, any of those kind of hardships. That without a true hardship, you very well could be wasting your time. It's one thing to have your signs up, but these short sales take a long time and they can be costly. So make sure that they really do qualify for the short sale before you actually jump into it.
How do you stay in touch with the bank?
We call the bank twice a week. Every week, no matter what, we call them and email them to get updates. My team is also required to touch every single person in the party. So meaning if we have an offer, we call the buying agent and we ask the buyer's agent get in touch with the buyer. We also contact the lender and the realtor involved so that everyone knows that we're calling every week so that we don't lose them. Because many times with the amount of time that the short sale takes, you have fallout. So we make sure that we're letting everyone know, hey, we're still on board, we're making contact, here's our progress, just so they know that we're working hard to get the short sale to go through.
How quickly are you able to turn the short sale from the time you put it on the market to the time it closes?
Our fastest short sale was 37 days from the time that we took the initial package from the seller. And we've had some that have taken over a year, so there's not really any magic number. But the average, I would say, is right around 4 months. But again, some of them can take much, much longer, depending on if there's investors involved and the bank that's involved, and also the seller too. I would really make sure that you have a seller that's completely on board and is willing to get you everything that you need in the beginning. Banks are constantly asking for updated paycheck stubs, updated bank statements, and what we do is we make sure that every month on the first that we request that from our sellers, and we let them know when I meet with them that I'm going to be requesting that. So that way when the banks ask for it, we already have it. Because if you don't give them what they need, it could take an extra 10 days, believe it or not, from the time they ask and from the time that you get it to them and from the time that they recheck the file, you can lose 10 days. And so if you average that by 4 months, that's 40 days that you can lose by not having what they request, when they need it. And I really am serious when I say that.
Have you had any challenges being able to contact your person inside the bank? Have you ever had a challenge where they ignore you, and how have you solved that?
Absolutely. We actually are having that issue right now with a particular bank. What we do is we just escalate it and we just go through the proper steps. So many of the banks right now are using the Equator system, and I'm sure everyone's very familiar with Equator. If you're not, make sure that you familiarize yourself. And you need to escalate it to the appropriate parties in the appropriate order and be very vigilant about daily contacting them. Another thing that we've learned with short sales is that whenever you talk to a negotiator or to the bank, you need to request that they actually document your conversation, because many of them have not been documenting conversations and will call the next day and they won't even know why we're calling, so we'll have to go through the reason for our call and what we're needing, et cetera, et cetera. So now we are actually specifically stating to the negotiator or the person on the other end, because many times it's not even the negotiator, it's a third, they have different lines of communication. We're saying, please document this call and, say A, B, and C. So that way when we call the next day, it's hopefully has made it into their system. And many times it doesn't. So it really just takes, a lot of calling and a lot of follow-up. And we just typically will be working on other things and having the speakerphone on so that when we're on hold, we can still kind of do business as usual.
Any other bits of advice on how to get a short sale through?
There's a couple other tricks that you can do. One of them is if the second, because everything has to be obviously on, the HUD, meaning there's nothing that can be negotiated between the seller and the buyer without the banks knowing. So sometimes the first, if you're in an escrow and you have a contract, the first will not allow a certain amount to go to the second. So therefore the second will deny it to let the short sale go through. So what we have just started doing is at that point, I actually read about it recently through a attorney website that I get, and what they said to do was to stop the short sale and kind of cancel the contract, and then at that point go back to the second, try to negotiate with the second your terms and a way to get them to settle. So say, hey, we owe you $200,000, will you take $15,000, and try to do a settlement with the second. And then once they settle and they release the seller of the deficiency and they get it, all in writing so it looks good and they're happy, and they tell you, hey, now that we've settled, we'd be willing, of course, to do the short sale. At that point, go back, open up the escrow again, resell the home, and then at that point the second's already been negotiated with and the first can get everything that they want. So that's a new technique that we're just going to start based upon readings that I've done. We don't have a lot of success with it yet because we're just starting, but that's another technique that we're going to start doing.
In that technique, is the second receiving funds directly from the seller, or are they receiving funds from the proceeds of the sale?
No, the seller is going to have to get them that money. And the reason why sometimes they would want to do that was because in our state, if it does go to foreclosure, then the second can go after them for deficiency for years to come. So, and depending on the situation of the seller, sometimes it might be in their best interest to go ahead and try to settle. A lot of seconds will settle for 10 to 20% of what the balance is owed, and so in some instances it's to the seller's benefit to do that. Sometimes it's not, obviously. They don't have the money, they don't want to, but and sometimes it is. So when the seller really, really wants to avoid foreclosure, that's an option that now we're going to start to take. But I will say that we haven't, we're getting most of our short sales approved. As long as they have a hardship and they truly do qualify for the short sale, we are having really high success. I can't give you a percentage, but very high success rate in getting our short sales to go through. And I just think that we attribute that to just being very aggressive about calling the banks, keeping in contact, and never giving up.
When you say a high percent, you think it's more than half?
Oh, definitely more than half. It's probably closer to 85%.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found this video valuable and you want to learn more from Krista, head on over to my website at mastermindagent.com/Krista so I can give you a free audio recording of my 1 hour and 22-minute conversation with Krista. She tells you how she sold 107 homes worth $22 million in a single year. All you need to do to get it is click the link below this video.